So, good morning, everyone. My name's Ed Norris, and I am the Chief Medical Executive for Behavioral and Community Health at Lehigh Valley Health Network. And in this role, I have the exciting opportunity to work hand in hand with the Leonard Parker Poole Institute for Health, as well as LVHN, as we engage our community in different events. Many of you were here for our first annual symposium on community health in November, and one of the findings of that is we wanted fewer large symposiums and more smaller interactive workshops, leading to several that we've had, including the one today. So a couple housekeeping items. What we're going to have here is an introduction to integrative collaborative community therapy for about an hour and a half, and then we will adjourn to a couple ballrooms downstairs where we'll actually be able to engage in a full session of ICT. And then for those of you who can join us, we'll have lunch back up here, as well as a book signing by the author. And so ICT is well, I should start with, we have two speakers today. The first is Dr. Adalberto Barreto. He's a Brazilian psychiatrist and anthropologist who has even managed to spend 5 years in France, as well as at least a month in Rome. And his academic training, research, and lived experience have provided him an excellent background as he tries to figure out how to connect and create dialogue between literature, health, and real life. And being able to see this way and to practice his professional experience in a collective way, he was able to organize and create a method of solidarity, including psychosocial intervention, and created ICT 35 years ago in the shanties of Brazil. And he will give a much better explanation of how this all came to be. But it's an approach that amplifies community resource networks, and these spaces allow community members to learn from one another, share their sufferings, overcome life difficulties, and if they can share each other, it strengthens the community bonds that support all of us across all of our communities. And so really through some serendipity and the work of the next speaker, Ken Thompson, all of this came together for us. And so Ken Thompson is a community and social psychiatrist who has practiced in many communities, including Boston City, the Bronx, the Connecticut Mental Health Center, and in Pittsburgh in many different multiple sites. And he has led initiatives to change the context of care, always seeking ways to broaden its greater impact. He actually helped establish the American Association for Community Psychiatry, served as the president of the American Association for Social Psychiatry, and also as the medical director for the Center of Mental Health Services in SAMHSA, where he really led efforts to develop recovery-oriented practice, behavioral health integration into primary care health services, and to promote public service. And so, again, through serendipity, he found out about Alberto's work that's been going on in the non-Anglo regions for over 35 years and said, this is a perfect opportunity to bring a new type of thinking to the United States and to support our communities. And so with that, he co-founded Visible Hands, which is trying to bring more of ICT across the US. And so with that, all of these groups came together to coalesce to lead this symposium this morning on ICT, and I'm very excited as we listen to a new opportunity for all of us in our community. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Barreto, Dr. Thompson.
Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So I'm Ken Thompson, and I'm very proud to share this podium with my colleague and compañero, Adalberto Barreto. What I wanted to say was just a couple of very quick introductory words to this process. The serendipity goes back also to me being Ed Meehan, when we were doing some work out of something called the Pennsylvania Psychiatric Leadership Council. And that's now a decade and a half ago or so, and we planted that seed, and here we are, I think, with the great opportunity to work with all of you and see what we can do to improve the health and well-being of the people of the Lehigh Valley. So I'm very excited to be here. We have really focused this work on Pennsylvania, so building out of Pittsburgh and building out of the Lehigh Valley and other places, we hope to have Pennsylvania be the launch point for this kind of approach. So just to say a couple words about why I think this is really important and why we've been doing this effort. The first is I'm a psychiatrist. I work in community mental health settings, federally qualified health center, a community mental health center. I work at a university. I work at a bunch of places. Everywhere I am is overwhelmed. Anybody here working in community mental health? Anybody here having an easy day every day because there's no demand, no long waiting lists, no challenges to get everybody seen? Is this nirvana here? I suspect not. So I've been looking for a long time for some way to address the crisis that existed before the emergency that I think we're in now. And I was looking for ways that could make it possible to amplify and maybe even get upstream of where problems start. Get to the point where things could be ameliorated or resolved before folks had to show up in an emergency room or in a psychiatric clinic. So from the mental health side, what you're hearing about is an intervention that tries to supply support and capacity by using the capabilities of the people in a community to help each other. We call it solidarity care. To use that capacity that human beings have to connect and share emotions and possible solutions to challenges as a way to deal with our mental health crisis emergency. But I don't want to leave it at just that. There is also a real need in our society for people to overcome the social disconnection that we are experiencing before COVID and after COVID. So many of you may be familiar with the fact that the Surgeon General just came out with a report identifying isolation, social disconnection, and loneliness as a very significant public health challenge. I want to suggest to you that he's absolutely right. And we are looking for ways to help communities bind themselves together. So that's a critical element of this. How do you help people connect? So a response to the mental health emergency, a response to the social crisis of disconnection. But there's even more to this. The other part to this is that when people connect, it allows them to begin to work together to develop the social capital and the capacity to do the really hard work we have to do in our country to build up, especially the areas that have been hit the hardest by things like deindustrialization, something that I know you all in this valley are familiar with, the challenges of how we are going to put together an economy that's inclusive of everybody and that allows folks to have a meaningful, dignified life in their families and communities. In order for that to happen, communities have to find a way to get together and work together. So this is also about community building. Adalberto comes from a favela. The work started in a favela. A favela, as Ed mentioned, it's a shanty. It's basically a place where people have nothing but cardboard to shelter themselves with. And the police or the army or thugs will come along and just decide to dispossess you of that piece of land and say, you're out of here. I will mention to you that the reason they are in the favelas in Brazil, just to keep this very topical, is because some of you may have heard of this. The Amazon is being cut down. When they cut down the Amazon, the people are being turned into climate refugees because the area turns into desert when they cut the trees down. So you're getting a message here from maybe our future about what happens if you don't attend to both our land and our country. But it is a lesson that I think we can use now if we begin to apply it to build a community and build communities that are potentially much more resilient and capable of finding solutions to challenges, from the emotional to the structural, from the challenges of psychiatric illness to dealing with economic challenges. So this is a very broad spectrum, but the most important thing about it is that it comes from the people. It comes from the community. It comes out of the people. It's the strength of the people that you get mobilized in this process. And when we do that, we are able to actually take all the things I just talked about, which are very broad and kind of spread everywhere, but they come out of a very simple place, which is the capabilities of the human beings who live in this valley. So I want to leave that with you. We can and you can do this and accomplish the kinds of things I was just talking about. So with that, I'll let you go, Adalberto. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. It's a pleasure for me to share with you our work in Brazil. For 37 years, you are working in this favela. And I'd like to share with you my itinerary, like psychiatrist, professor from the university that arrive in this shantytown to start our work. How we built the integrative community therapy, that is a space of dialogical conversation and collaborative exchanges. It was not the product of a personal inspiration, but the result of collective perspiration in a process of collective learning. It was not something that I think in the universe and I bring for the people. I go there, I stay there, and you create some in the other sense. The symbol of our work is this spider web, inspired by the culture of the Tremembé Indians from the northeast of Brazil. The spider webs is our symbol. The Tremembé Indians dance the torém. They invoke and imitate the animals of which they have been taught. With the spider dance, they remind us that an indigenous without his land, a community without its bonds, is like a spider without its web. It's web that nourishes, aggregates, and protects. The ICT is therefore a space for us to build bonds between people and the planet, people, community and university, everything that aggregate and strengthen the group. Is not to resolve problems, but to create connections. Okay. I would like to, next. Okay. My two universe. Coming from a modest family in Brazil, imbued with the culture of the sertão, of traditional magical religious knowledge, I integrate a first way of representing the world, care, illness, and suffering. Later on, I had the chance to study medicine at university, which gave me other tools to understand illness, suffering, and care. Awesome. Okay. And so I knew two different universes, a magical religious and the academic universe. I realized that these two apparent different models of representation turned out to be segregative, included the other and everything that was different, excluded the other and everything was different. In my first religious magical universe, that which was not Catholic, Roman, Apostolic, was the devil things to avoid. In the academic world, that which did not come from academic research was charlatanism, quackery to be avoided. And so I say, both work in the same way, exclude the difference. I gradually realized that the academic world hid relational deficiencies of warmth and humanity, the expression of which was nevertheless very common in my Nordestine culture. I had the chance in the difficult period of military dictatorship in Brazil to come and study in Europe. Like a gold digger, I thought that Europe represented an exhaustive mine of intellectual wealth, knowledge, and academic skills. So I did my specialty in psychiatry at Université René Descartes and my PhD in anthropology in Lyon. Finally, I followed and validated studies in philosophy and theology in Rome and ethno-psychiatry in Paris with Georges Devreux, the father of ethno-psychiatry. When I returned to Brazil, I got a chair in health community and psychiatry consultation in College of Medicine at Federal University of Ceará. In this time of consultation, I received more and more people from the favela, referred by my brother, lawyer, Ayrton, of the Human Rights Center, suffering from exclusion, victims of domestic violence or abandonment. And faced with this challenge, I decided to go in their context with my medical students to better understand the situation of this consultant, these patients. Listen to them, I realized that was more about suffering to be received and cared of than illness of psychiatric disorder to be treated by drugs. An example, this is the first time a woman talks about her insomnia as a result of her husband's murder. Immediately, I gave her a medical order that she refused because she couldn't buy it. She started crying. At this particular moment, another woman offered her a handkerchief to wipe her tears. Another bring her a cup of tea. Another one give her a feet massage. When another talks about her insomnia and what she had done to sleep. Immediately, I have seen a visible effect. The people creating relationships, conversation. At the end of ICT round, she was surrounded. She received what she needed, social support, and not my expertise. Rather than bring my science, my diagnosis, offering my medications, I asked if other people had experienced a similar situation and which they have done to improve or solve it. I realized that the community that has problems has also its solutions. This was born the Integrative Community Therapy, ICT, a space for welcome soul pain and collective suffering. The community where we are working in Fortaleza is called Quatro Varas, 4 sticks. Why 4 sticks? The legend says an elder man at the end of his life called on his 4 sons. He asked each one of them to break a stick. Then he showed that the 4 sticks bound together were unbreakable. And there I found the orientation of my work, which was to join the sticks without excluding any, unite the academic knowledge with the indigenous, African, Portuguese, and Asian alike, and also life experience in a complementary way. He just, little parenthesis, próximo. É o próximo ainda, tu não está seguindo. Aí. So we have 2 fields of actions. You have the clinical care, held by professionals of health, focused on curing the disease, chemical scientific efficacy, treatment and cure by drugs, centered on the individual, tendency to medicalization of life is hard access, prevention is limited to the body. The other side, you have the solidary care that I call this. Here we are all protagonists, carers in well-being. Is a citizen action, and the ICT therapy is here. It's not a clinical, it's not in competition with clinical model. It's a complementary way. Here is centered on the person, on the prevention, in the interaction of the people, the prevention, promotion of health, life. It intervenes in what generates suffering, fight against stigmatization, for social justice, and defend what we have in common, water, land, air. Because the old model, you are preoccupied with the body of human person. You don't include the planet, the environment. You have to, in this new vision to the health, you have to pay attention for the things that you have in common, the water, the quality of water, the air. Okay. And is you welcome the people unconditionally, takes care of the soul pain, suffering, with cultural resource, massage, herbal, bath, tears, integrative therapies, Reiki, and so forth. Here we don't talk here we talk about symbolic effectiveness, not scientific effectiveness. It's interaction-centered, not in the individual inside of them. It is based on collective knowledge built by life or inherited from ancestors. Encourage the group to build its present and future from the resource. You know that medicine have made great advantage in the treatment of pathology of intracellular and intrapsychic, led by specialists. The challenge now for us is to find remedies for pathologies of the disturb, of living together, of live with difference. For me, is this the big challenge. The community, the country, you are divided, polarized, and how to stay together without fight the other who thinks different of me. Okay. We create the community therapy to bring people together in a collective space of dialogical conversation and collaborative exchange. It is an approach that amplifies the community resource network. This space allows people to learn from one another, share their suffering, and overcome their life difficulties. It is not a therapy to solve problems, but to create connection. If the connection are created, the problem are resolved. It not depend of me, like professional, it's in there. When we finish our ICT round, everybody is talking, create links, and the therapist is alone. Nobody comes to talk with us, because this is the real goal. The people create a relationship and find solutions. Passando. We invite participants to begin listening to the concern with their hearts and not with their minds, because everything, you arrive in the mind, but it's here. The connectiveness between us is the emotion. To debate ideas divide the group. Never debate ideas. So the ICT is not a space for debating ideas, nor for indoctrination, to convert the other our model, but for celebrate life, sharing life experience and mutual learning in construction of bond of affectivity. In ICT, what interests us is the emotion aroused by the suffering presented by the individual, which resonates among the participants and not the narrative itself. This creates fields of meanings that allow the construction of identification links to a linguist's affective system, which enable reflection and broadens the awareness of belonging to a collectivity. With the concern, they do not turn into problems about which people speak objectively, intellectually, but are fields of meanings that build meaningful relationship between the participant and favor them to organize a linguistic and affective system. Okay, the ICT methodology is very simple. From a personal restlessness, we seek to identify what it has of universal, of collective, to be reflected by the group. The concern presented by someone and chosen by the group, because we vote. This afternoon, we will do ICT round, and so you can observe this, is the starting point. It is from the concern, alcoholism, familiar conflict, stress, that the facilitators seek to stimulate the sharing of life experience. The key question that triggers reflection is, which of us has experienced something like this before, and what have you done to get out of it? Who has already lived a similar situation, and how they cope with it? Who has helped them? What have they learned from going through? What have they discovered from that experience that can be helpful for other lives? What abilities, beliefs, values help them to achieve those results? And so, several strategies will emerge from the group. Example, for insomnia, herb tea, to walk, to pray, to walk, to talk, support, to laugh, to receive a massage, to sing. For loss of hope, who once lost hope of overcoming anything and what he did to overcome it? It does not focus on the problem, but in the emotion that is universal. During the COVID, the 2 years, we create a network international with 15 countries. And you have done some ICT rounds online. More than 15,000 people participate. You arrive at the same conclusion. The emotion is no boundaries. The fear that a woman who lives in the favela is the same who lives in New York, Milan, Paris, Rome, is the same. And so is the emotion that create links between you becomes human. When you arrive in the field of ideas, and so you start to fight. It is sharing this relieves the pain and suggests new clues to overcome their problems. This is the beginning of the construction of networks of solidarity and co-responsibility. ICT has a direct effect upon social health determinant stress in social support. Through question asked by the moderator, is the entrance door to collective reflection based on life experience. A multiplicity of voices, genuine, different, reframing a new meaning, favoring the discovery of singular selves, of otherness as conventional partner, and of collective as a space of belonging, of coexistence with different us. ICT promotes a safe space for participants to share life experience and wisdom, with each individual become their own therapist by listening to the life stories that are told, sharing in the responsibility of seek solution and overcome daily challenge in a warm, welcome environment. ICT session is structured by roles: silence and active listening. Speaking I, no advice, no speech, no judgment, no interpretation, and you can suggest songs, proverbs, stories, poems. Ensure respectful exchanges and protection against ideological manipulation. New meanings are constructed and shared, favoring the discovery of singular selves, of otherness as conventional partner, and of collectivity as a space of belonging, of coexistence with different us. Through question asked by the moderate promotes bond of affection, trust, and social support networks. Enable those who only say no to themselves to learn to say yes to themselves. Leave the position of submitted object to active partner. Open a door of hope for those who do not believe in themselves in order in the future. Victoria. To do so, we need to accept the fact that we experts do not know everything, and that we need each other like professionals. Being humble is being aware of our own competence and limits, but accepting the competence of others as complementary. This is only possible if you give up the position of the expert who knows to learn from each other as complementary. A new community collaborative is built with common meanings. The ICT, as a space for proposal-oriented conversation, has the intent to promote bonds among people and to put into evidence their competence, favoring autonomy and individual strengthening community and network. The exchange between participants during conversation define new relational ontologies that organize thoughts, feeling, and action, giving meaning to what should be recognized as a community itself. Is said by Grandeso, is a prof from University of São Paulo who work with us. Through weekly meetings, the protagonism of community knowledge elaborated from life experience is opportunized, building collaborative networks of promotion of life and care. For the last 36 years, we have been seeking participative solution, integrating knowledge and expanding solidarity network. Step by step, the sharing rounds were being held in other slums, in schools, churches, health centers, even the prison. Population suffering from climate catastrophes, universities. We go where the people are. We are not asking that they come to our institution. You go there. And now it's part of the official policy of the Health Ministry of Brazil. Only in Brazil, more than 40,000 people have been qualified by my University Federal of Ceará and by the Brazilian Association of Community Therapy to organize ICT rounds, and I have already reached 45 countries around the world. It is a potent practice in mental health with an emancipatory democratic approach and proposal. It is a new paradigm of integrative relational care in mental health, centered on the needs and resources of users in its territorial space. Integrative systemic community therapy is based on two fundamental assumptions. Every person, whatever their socioeconomic or cultural condition, even if they do not know it, has resource and knowledge useful to others. These skills come from overcoming difficulty and cultural resource. Under this basis, sharing occurs in a horizontal and circular way, since what is valued is not the difference in economic or university situation level, but the variety of life experience. they are all on the same level. Restructuring of individual and collective care and stigmatizing psychiatric suffering, guaranteeing citizenship and favoring the emergence of a network aiming at the integration of the subject and resource to the social context. ICT is a community-based intervention with the objective of strengthening networks of life production and integral care. A dialogue exercise in mental health where knowledge emerges from everyday practice and experiences. It seeks the sharing of life experience in which suffering and coping strategies are used as raw material for individuals to discover the social implication of human suffering and provide opportunities for change. The care relationship is no longer between patient and professional, but through the bonds that are built in a group relationship based on respect and appreciation of the stories. Mental health is made with affective relational dialogical network and does not medicalize suffering, misery, and impoverishment. ICT is a light technology of care, focused on the relationship of the human being and its potentialities. It integrates professionals and users in the same space as actors of health promotion, in opposition to the classical and universal model of mental health that establishes vertical power relationship. Promotes humanity, compassion, and respect. These are key elements of a mental health system that incorporates human rights into its culture of care in its territorial space. One difficulty for me when I started this work was how could I put aside my position as a specialist holder of university knowledge. Furthermore, how to realize that I was there not to exercise power, but my expertise, but rather to heal myself or my university alienation, to learn another way to heal others and myself. I was part of the learning is not just about adding knowledge and complexity. Often, on the contrary, it is a matter of stripping, cleaning, and eliminates seeking simplicity. Thus, I could be freed from the position of the knowing all expert and accept to learn from others, aware that I was there for my own sake, and benefit, like others, from the collective learning. Come initially for the duty to help and to exercise my profession in a different way, I realized that I was not just a donor, giver. I come to own me, and like others, was part of what was being shared. I discovered in this session that the precariousness was also in me, in my world vision, in my world view, in my reference model in health, and the institution response. It's interesting because we don't go to do something for others. You are implicated. You are a circularity model. You are constantly, when I see, I go to myself. These finds facilitate the abandonment of my hierarchical position and knowledge, incompatible with collaboration between different knowledge that require the horizontality of the relationship. All learning is a way of balancing certainties. All certainty is a prison. Sometimes it's our professional who are prisoner of our perception. One person's experience is no more important than another's. It's just different. There is no knowledge superior to the other, but knowledge to share. You are all apprentices. What exists is collective knowledge, At ICT, those who generally speak must be silent to allow those who never speak to speak. It's not easy for us because you are educated to talk, to say things. You have to be silent and listen. This is very revolutionary approach, because how I have to every time say, listen, calm. Here is an... não, próximo, avance. Você não mudou, não. Avançou. Okay. This is the proposition, an extension of vision. My proposition is articulate clinical models with solidarity model in a complementary and non-competitive perspective. From our model, clinical model, is based on the negative things. It's clinical and the individual. We propose that we include solidarity model together. It's a scientific knowledge. Solidarity model. The scientific mutualization of the wisdom. From the model that to treat pathology also promote health. Solutions come from above. It's very expensive. Solutions from sideways, the social support. We forget you think always the capital, the money, and you forget the social cultural capital. They are there. A model that generates dependence to a model to promote co-responsibility, to a model centered in the individual, focusing the collectivity, from a model where together practitioners and patients are part of the problem and part of the solution. For more information, ok, aí volta para o anterior aquele. Anterior. Okay, I would like to make an appeal to everyone present here. Our society is sick. In addition to the life-destroying wars, a predatory economy pulse that values profit and destroy the planet, climate disasters, forced migration, causing collective suffering, material and affectiveness loss, identity crisis, racism. You have witnessed in all nations intolerance of all kinds. Our society are polarized, divided. Coexistence in diversity is increasingly difficult, not to say impossible. We systemic therapists of open dialogue need to broaden our research and our dialogical action beyond clinical models, families and our offices, and include the collective, the social. You have to go there where the suffering people live. Medicine has made much progress in the treatment of intercellular intrapsychic pathologies held by specialists. The challenge now is to find remedies for the disorder of living together between people, nations, and the planet, of living with difference in different contexts. There are no chemical drugs or vaccine for this disease, social disease, and no industrial laboratories interested in this investment. It will be through open, sincere, and willing dialogue to build a new society for our children and our planet, represented here by all of us present. It is time to plant seeds of resilience to bring about a new spring by a transformation, open dialogue. To overcome, volta. Volta. To overcome. Okay. To overcome this challenge must be the work of all of us from the most diverse cultural and therapeutic approach. We must to create a new paradigm, starting from our current work in mental health professional, to revise our curriculum, our mental representation of men and of the process of wellness, health, and illness. We don't need to achieve an understanding of the structure and interaction of the social body as comprehensive as that of the structure and physiology of human body. We do not get sick only because of neurosynaptic problems or neurometabolism. We get sick also because of the dysfunction of social synapses, where economy, politics, and ideologies intervene that degrade our natural environment and cause suffering and mental illness. It is not enough to treat pathology, but also to promote health. And I will propose you to assist a little video of 3 minutes, I think, that is very interesting. It's a metaphor. A horse that is is in the mud.
Hello, friends.
And he don't start how to go out alone. And the community find a solution, and you will find that it's very interesting. We don't touch, we don't, just he listen and observe what happens around him. It's an image of ICT. Okay.
Hello, friends. This short movie clip gives us the proof of one's mental strength and abilities to come out of negativity and hopelessness. A horse once stuck in the pond filled with mud and could not get out and lost all hopes of coming out and was giving up the idea. When a few herdsmen inspected the place, we saw the mud would not allow the horse to come out. It was only the strength that the horse could gain mentally and not give up. Would bring the horse back to its feet. After inspecting the soil, there was an idea in the herdsman. He told his friends, I have a plan. I hope it works. The herdsman getting the herd of the horses to run around the pond was to mentally inspire the stuck horse, to give it strength so that it could come out from the mud. And as the horse saw his friends gallop around the pond, he mentally decided he's going to give it his last try. With all the strength, he rose. With the energy, the effort came out. This is a lesson for all of us to draw all the strength and energy to come out of these bad times which has hit us. That's why be positive, try to help others around. So let's help our friends stuck in the pond of hopelessness, the negativity, to come out and guide them and help them to change their lives by providing this positivity by words and actions so that the horse can come out. And there the horse struggling with all his strength, slow and steady, stands up on its 4 feet, ready to gallop among his friends. God bless you. Take care. May you be positive forever. Amen.
So we have, I think, about a half an hour or so for conversation and questions. We've been joined by 2 other folks, Bridget and Vittoria. We don't have a way for you to speak that can be heard.
I will project.
Or we've got,
No.
so would you like to introduce yourself, Bridget?
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Bridget Hassig, and I am the Chief of Staff and Operations with Visible Hands, and part of the ability to bring this incredible movement of bringing our basic human capital and assets to play in community health. And so I am so pleased to see all of you here. I think if there's any takeaway immediately, is that there is a tool now to be a front line of defense, a tool that can allow people to come together and find their own resilience to be able to make the healthcare system be able to focus on those people that have the more acute and chronic conditions. So it's coming back. Instead of looking forward to the specialists, it's being able to help the specialists do what they need to do, but allow the community to embrace the fact that they very much have the ability and reinstate those assets in each person. So I look forward to your Q&A.
Morning all, I'm Vittoria. I'm a psychologist also and a community therapist, and I'm glad to be here with all of you. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to think of and rethink about our way our works and how we are achieving those people, and also how I resonate with all the systematic, because I think personally this is the art that we always doing with take care of people. And every time that someone asks me how is to work with this, I said, I need to work on myself, always. I work on myself personally in all areas, relational, spiritual, with food, with friends, with art, and everything else. And it's like a wheel. If it's not working some area, it's not gonna roll in. And Visible Hands Collaborative is what we are trying to make here as For Varas does. So thank you all. I appreciate this invitation. And I hope that we can do more things together as these horsers or these friends, how you like to be called. In the art of each one of you has your own windows and collective effort. Thank you.
Yes, I have, yes. Is it on? Okay. So you've heard from Adalberto. You've heard a little bit about the work that Bridget and Vittoria and myself have been doing. Any reactions, questions, concerns?
Can you start also with the fact of the training of the community, just to set the ground, the fact that no degrees are needed? Right?
Yes.
Excuse me, could you just repeat the question because people on the WebEx can't hear?
Oh.
So we were asked, what does it look like to get trained, and who are the people who get trained? What's that process? I'm going to say a few words about that, and then I'll ask my colleagues to just join in. The main group of people who we are hoping to train are not mental health professionals. We're looking for lay folks in communities who are very committed and concerned about two things: their own well-being and the well-being of their community, and how they see an interaction between the two of them. So we are looking to that kind of a workforce. They're being created in New York, in the state of New York, and they're being called community well-being workers. So it's a concept that I think we are trying to build on, the community health worker notion. Most of the folks who've trained in Brazil fit this qualification. What happens is people engage in this process. There is a method to become trained as a facilitator. A lot of that work is, as I said, about learning how to be yourself in the context of being in a group where sometimes very challenging issues are going to come up and concerns are going to come up. So you have to be in a place where you're comfortable in your own skin in the process of facilitation. So the work is both learning the method of doing ICT and practicing it. There are 5 steps to ICT, which we'll kind of come into maybe later, and Adalberto can talk about the actual sort of process of it, or Vittoria can. And that is, learning that process usually takes somewhere around, we've been doing it online, it's usually probably about 8 weekends, 6 or 7 hours each day on a weekend over a period of about 9 months to a year. And then we get people starting to do the ICT rounds themselves, and we supervise them in that process. So it takes some effort. It's not just a simple, we give you a workbook, you go home, the next day you're doing it. On the other hand, you are doing ICT almost within a month or two of getting the basic training. And so you're learning as you do, and that's another part of this process.
To the question, one of the beauties of ICT is the way that it can actually be trained and provided to individuals that are in the community. Our experience has told us that individuals ideally need to have an affiliation, whether it's a healthcare system or it's a community-based organization or it's a church, or it could be any informal neighborhood association. Again, it's changing that paradigm of I have an affiliation automatically. It sort of reminds me of a fish doesn't realize it's in water. We take a look at the water that's surrounding an individual that's interested in becoming trained as a facilitator, or organizations that are interested in reaching out to the community more with another tool, basically, that doesn't exist to assist. The training can take anywhere from, I'd say, 190 to 250 hours. The way that it can be done is in multiple ways, and we want to be able to work with the organization to best meet their needs. People can be brought together. It can be done online, and then they're brought together later. I'll give you an example. Point Park University in Pittsburgh is the first university in the nation that is offering ICT training this fall. And that will be through a curriculum that is offered in the way that they normally offer. But our instructors, who have been working with Adalberto for decades, will also be engaged not only in academically and working with individuals and coaching them on how to do this and giving them skill development. It's really about skill development to look at yourself and what you bring to a situation and then be able to facilitate and moderate conversation as a peer. And so a lot of it is coaching. A lot of it is practice. We want individuals to feel exceptionally comfortable when they begin to go out and be able to do this in the community. And so coaching support, practice support goes on even well after the actual time together in learning. But it is really dependent upon the organization's needs and our ability then to deliver it in that manner. But I want to be very clear from my experience. I call us a learn and leave society. I walk into a conference and I get a certificate a day later and I come back into the workplace and I'm trying to apply that. That is not what this is. This is true emotional, mental, mind-body work that is done, and the skill development of how to facilitate and moderate different things that may come up in conversation, and the moderated steps, most importantly, through ICT that elicit and arise the emotions and people's ability to speak an I and understand how the wisdom of others can assist them. So it is very much a skill opportunity, but it's surrounded in coaching and practice.
Just to say that the classical model, we learn theory to apply for the others, not for ourselves. And our proposition, we are work with the people who are suffering. The suffering of the other touch my own suffering. And so this training group will have half of theory and half of healing the healers. You have a moment, a practice to do trabalho corporal. Breathing exercise. And so it's both. Half is theory and half is to work, to do a work about myself. Okay, you can go.
Yeah, okay. So this the work. It's breathing exercise, body exercise that we're gonna work on ourselves as transgenerational way as well. Inheritance, how we passing through this. If I'm take care of who just appear with me in front of me as a patient working about suicide or headache or whatever, it wakes me up my traumas and wakes me up all my afraids and feelings, and I need to deal with to not confuse myself with the issue that is present to me. So this is something in person that we do often, like touch, and like Bridget was saying, is a continuing education.
And you cannot do online. To work this is in presential. For that reason, you have two moments. The first moment is in presential, in personal. 4 days together. And after you can go to the practice, because it's very simple, it's not complicated. It's very simple, the method. And so you stay 4 days together, a group of 30, 40 people. And after we start the theoretical aspect online, and the end, 3 or 4 days for take a healer of the healers, healing the healers. It's very interesting because you are part of the problem. If you just stay in the theoretical approach, it's impossible to work with the suffering, the human suffering, because you are touched all the time.
So, and this is also, as your question had, thank you, just to finish and then go for next. It's to anyone who are implicated with any leader of each community, co-worker, churches, university. If it's someone who is on front of a group of persons and is a leader of connection, we're gonna go for it. So it's for people who has formal education and who do not have formal education. So anyone else?
Has this been implemented with teenagers or young adults?
Do you want to?
In Brazil, yes. Yes, and we've done it with some younger folks, but we have not gotten down into the teenage realm yet in the United States yet.
In Brazil, we do even with the children. You have to change something, draw, to paint. For example, paint, you're suffering in your family. And after each one paint, and after he talks about this. For example, one say, I paint the hand of my mommy. Why you paint the mom? Because he beats me. I don't like. And so we start to work about this, or sometimes a positive thing. What my mommy do something that I like very much. Always is we learn to do questions. So the ICT course, you learn to listen, because it's a double listen. I listen the other, but I listen the resonance in me. It's an inner dialogue. Always. He talks about them. When something talks about the suffering, when I go to talk, I don't talk with the person, about the person, or to the person. I talk about the thing that resonates in me. I live the same situation, but me, it was not the tea I take. It was a massage, and he gave the address of the healer who lives. I'm not saying, to me, is walking. It's interesting because it's different. It's not a group psychotherapy. And someone brings a problem, and all the group there to help me. In the ICT, I bring my suffering, you vote, you discover that if I receive 20 votes, the people don't vote in me. Each one votes in itself because it's identified. When I say my problem, me too. If the people, the majority votes on me, in my problem, my concern, it means that they are concerned. They lived in the past, and you are trying to say what you have done to the past this, to overcome. And all, in the beginning, I call this therapy à la carte, como se diz. Yeah. Yes? Because you can choose, after you call community therapy. But you can choose. I cannot say, this is bad for you. No advice.
I just wanted to add to that question that you had is actually we have a pilot that most likely will, it has already begun actually in San Francisco in going into school districts. So there is a facilitator that has been trained in actually Geneva that will be looking to work with us to get into school districts. This has been very active in Pittsburgh, and so we've been doing in person over the past year in a place called Friendship Park, actually, if any of you are familiar with that. And we are also offering ICT online every Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. nationally, so anyone can actually come in and participate with this as well.
So just to know, we do this with kids, or even the kids can participate in the place of the grow-ups, because the suffering doesn't have frontiers. I suffer as a kid, I suffer as an adult, and the feelings are universal in an open space.
Oh.
Thank you so much. So when we speak about suffering, we often, we have to also think about suffering within the social construct and the social context in which people live, correct? How does ICT help to bridge that gap between sort of the social barriers and the social constructs that are significantly different among communities?
I'll talk in Portuguese, it's easy for me. The Islam one day, o tema escolhido foi insônia.
So for this subject, let's point a thematic, insomnia.
And we talk nós falamos sobre as estratégias de superação, que é chá, isso aqui.
So I have talked right here about the strategies of overcoming this. Teas, massage, or exercise.
E depois vamos para a dimensão social.
And after this, we go into the social dimension.
Na favela se dorme mal.
In the shanty towns, the favelas, it sleep bad.
Porque não tem luz elétrica.
Because in that context, they don't have lightning, electricity, security.
E aí, depois da roda com os direitos humanos, se foi na prefeitura exigir luz, exigir segurança.
So after the round, we went down, or you can make some reference to the mayor, looking for better illumination on the streets, looking for cops and security, water, quality of living.
Uma outra vez, policial foi violento com uma mulher. Prendeu ela de forma injusta e bateu nela.
So I want to give you a real example. One time, a cop came and hit the woman badly without any saying.
E claro que nós conversamos com ela sobre isso. Depois a pergunta, aí é os direitos humanos que intervêm. O que é que nós podemos fazer a nível social?
So the woman came to the ICT and said about this struggle that she lived with and what happened with her. So we asked to the human rights what was possible to do with this situation. In your context, in a social level, what we can provide to better assist you.
Conseguimos uma audiência pública na Assembleia Legislativa do Estado.
So we went to the state assembly of the state to work in an audience to the city.
Para discutir sobre a violência policial na favela.
To talk about the violence that works in that community, in that favela.
Nesse dia, nós levamos uns 4 ônibus, quase 400 pessoas para pressionar os políticos para que esse delegado saísse de lá, fosse botado fora.
In this day, we went out with 4 buses to the mayor to talk about the aggression that this delegate and those cops are doing with the women and also with other folks to put him away.
E pela primeira vez, delegado de polícia foi colocado fora porque a comunidade pressionou.
In our city, for the first time ever, this delegate and this cop was putting out of work because the community was pressed them to do something.
E nas rodas, embora tenha o aspecto social, nós não ficamos no campo das ideias, de criticar o governo, de falar mal disso ou daquilo. É o que a comunidade pode fazer.
In those ICT rounds, we talk about what we can do to the. So at the end of it, we are building our bonds and strength together to figure out what we are supposed to do. If it's a human rights, if it's go to clinicians, or to make any refer that appears to us.
I appreciate your question because to me it's very poignant and something that we've generally talked about. But you cannot have successful community development without human development first. Buildings can be built, housing vouchers can be made available, food programs can be available if it's appropriate to the community's needs. So to the question that you had, how do we bridge that? Very paradigm that I struggle with myself when we're doing this, which is we don't. But if we teach the skills to someone within community or a community health worker or a community benefit, community well-being worker to be able to elicit that, then those bridges will occur where they should. Versus we have a great process for you, for your community. The process is training someone to elicit that behavior from the people participating, so the community that has its problem has its own solution. It is extremely important to understand that ICT, this actually makes me emotional. In my background with social services, ICT promotes equity, accessibility, and community agenda by its very nature. So we are taking something that can create better mental health and community development ultimately by allowing individuals to come together and define their own problems and solutions in a very safe, structured way. So the populations we work with that traditionally don't have access to mental health can have mental health access. The equity is thrown open. The doors are thrown open to individuals that need to come together to be able to be heard, affirmed, and learn from others, and walk away with a menu of personal solutions that are applicable to their specific needs. But every single person in that group has observed that and takes that same thing home. So it's an extremely powerful model at the community base. Thanks.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate your model and your work. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm sure you've gotten many times, but I'm curious to see what you say. Just when your trained facilitators encounter people in the community with serious and persistent mental illness, what tends to happen, especially in communities where there may not be resources available for folks?
o maior patrimônio de uma pessoa é a confiança em si.
The biggest patrimony that the person has is the self-autonomy and the self-confidence on.
Quando a pessoa vive numa situação de miséria afetiva, porque a pior miséria não é a miséria material, é a miséria interiorizada nas pessoas.
So when the people are living misery, an affective misery is the greatest misery that the person can deal with. It's not the misery that we see on the things in material.
Este é um grande desafio. Como ajudar as pessoas a acreditarem nelas?
So this is a big challenge. How to make the people who are dealing with this to believe on themselves.
Uma delas é valorizá-las. E a melhor maneira de valorizar é um doutor, uma pessoa importante, é escutá-las.
So one of them are to truly listen to those people. And better than this is someone who is a doctor, who has some to say to those people and value what they are saying and feeling.
A favela, ou a comunidade, é um espaço de pessoas que estão soltas, desligadas, desvinculadas, porque com o processo de migração, elas perdem vínculos com a família, com a terra, com a cultura e terminam perdendo o juízo, que é a mente, que é a doença mental.
So the favela, it's a place that people are in there, doesn't have any connection. They are alone and doesn't have links to look forward. So this come from migration. This come from the movements. So they start to lose and cut violently the links that are bounding with their lives. So
if this population live broken the links, the best way is rebuild the links. And how can you do this? Talking and listen. We don't need of a money or very expensive thing to do something. It's sometimes if a woman who arrives crying because he discovered that his son is in the drug abuse, he needs benzodiazepine ou abraço.
Or a hug.
A massage or another thing.
So I actually want to also respond to this a couple other ways. The first thing is that, as Adalberto said, the model of solidarity care and clinical care, while they have very distinct kind of approaches, they are not in opposition to each other. They are complementary to each other. So part of the work of ICT in the favelas and in communities is to reduce the demand on the clinical services that already exist. So in the way it works in Brazil right now, I mentioned this before, the community health workers in Brazil are folks in community who work in connection with their primary health stations, primary health providers. And what will happen in a community in Brazil is that a person will go to see their primary medical person. There's Brazil, go figure, has a national health program. They're not a very wealthy country, relatively speaking, to the United States, but they do have, everybody's covered. Not to say anything here. And what happens is that somebody will go to the primary health person. The primary health person will notice that they have some emotional challenges, things are going on in their life. You know, they all live in community, very much connected. And what they'll say to that person is, okay, I think it would be a really good idea for you to go to ICT that's meeting every Thursday at 1 o'clock in the church courtyard, right? We'd like you to go. They get to go and meet outdoors all year long. There are some elements about Brazil that make it hard to think about doing some of this in the United States, but they sit outside and do their ICT. So they go and they find that about 87% of the people who go to the ICT don't need to get further help. So the demand reduction occurs, and that frees up In Brazil, much less resources than we already have on the clinical side. So one of it is to decompress the amount of people who are in need of help and make it possible for the clinical capacity to attend to those that do. The other process Adalberto spoke about, but I want to add a little more to this, which is this idea that, that people who have psychiatric challenges of all kinds, what we're finding out is that the most painful part of a psychiatric challenge isn't the disease or the symptoms themselves. It's actually the social isolation and exclusion that occurs as a result of that. So I want to reinforce Adalberto's idea that anything that helps build those connections is actually really, really important. And ICT is a place where that can happen. The rules are very simple, and it is possible for people with all kinds of challenges to participate in it and have it be a meaningful experience. Then lastly, what I want to say is that when the session is over, the ICT facilitators stick around. And we'll say at the beginning of a session, you know, if any of you don't have your issue addressed enough here, or there's something really pressing that you don't feel like you can talk about in public, we do not ask people to talk about private, shameful stuff that they carry inside them in these groups. We're not trying to get at their deepest, darkest challenge, because this is not an effort to be HIPAA compliant. We're not creating anonymous groups. We actually want people to talk about normal day-to-day challenges that people have, emotional challenges that they're not going to be ashamed to talk about and carry with them. So when we do that, we say to people, if there is something you cannot talk about, or it's too pressing, or you're in trouble, then we want the facilitators to be trained in how the heck they find the resource that will address that clinical need. That is still a challenge in places where there are limited clinical needs, but there is at least an opportunity to get some focus on it and make whatever accessibility is possible. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Can you hear me? Hear me here? Okay. So I have a whole bunch of thoughts in my head in regards to all this, and thank you. Gracias por venir aquí a Lehigh Valley para hablar con la comunidad de salud. But I'm thinking of indigenous groups that at the end of the year, they end up holding a community fight so that they can clear out all the negativity that they've had all year long, you know, their neighbor that they didn't like, that did something to them. And at the end of the year, they end up fighting each other and they clear it out, and then that's it. A new year starts, we're done. So that was one thought that came into my head as you guys were sharing this type of therapy. But I'm also thinking about the way in which our country is and has been for years. The elephant in the room is we can bring these types of therapeutic processes to our communities, but we also have to start working on the systemic inequalities that have been built, especially around our brown and black communities. They have broken up homes, they have broken up communities, and then when we try to come back and combat that by talking to the government and saying, hey, this is not right, the police is not treating our children right, our educational system is broken, then we get the beat down, and then we can no longer speak. So I think we have to address those things, and I think this group of people and the Parker Poole Foundation Institute has been doing that kind of work, but we need to spread that and be realistic in the fact that, yes, we can bring those things in, but we need to have like-minded people who are willing to sacrifice, because that's what it is. It's a sacrifice to be able to say, I'm standing up for this, and this is wrong, and we need to do something different. I think I can only speak for my brown and black community, we have been doing this kind of work for generations. I'm Puerto Riqueña. We've been doing this kind of work, and like you guys have been doing in Brazil and across the world, where we speak to each other in groups, in circles. In our district, we started doing restorative practices years ago, and that's the same type of mindset. You sit in a circle, you talk it out, you not to get deep into the abyss of really what's going on with you, but at least be able to share and communicate and speak to one another to come to a conclusion of how do we fix this together. So that's just what was coming to me the whole time I'm sitting here, and I'm like, yes, I love this. I already kind of do this work in the work that I do. I work with the Allentown School District, and I do this with, my family and friends. We hold empowering sessions about mindfulness and talk about how do we make things work, how do we fix things, and we go out and do it. So it's about the action of it as well. We could talk, but we need action, and we need to actually do the work.
I guess one thing I could add to that, I've got a mic, that is important to note is that the favela that this started in, routinely being knocked down and destroyed by the police and the army, and afflicted with all kinds of very significant oppressions and challenges that the people, when they became victimized, end up suffering. That favela now is actually a bricks and mortar community of people. That is the place in the city of Fortaleza in Brazil that people go to for wellness and healing. So it has taken, I think that to come back to the concept, the struggle is long and hard, and there are many forces arrayed against it. What's important is that the people are able to carry the struggle on and persist in it, and that the casualties that come are addressed, and we do everything we can to keep people as strong and resilient and capable for themselves and for each other as we possibly can. And the healing circle, I think, is a long-standing idea. It goes back, in all cultures, actually, all the way back. It is a predominant way of people in the past handling things. We are trying to help build that capacity, that solidarity care back into the world that we live in today, so that as we go forward, people are not just extruded and become casualties of the challenges without communities having an opportunity to rescue each other.
Quando eu cheguei na favela, os recursos culturais que eram os curandeiros estavam todos adoecidos e neuroleptizados.
When I arrived to the favela, I came out from the hospital to the favela, all the healers and caretakers are, the cultural resources are down, worse down.
Com psicotrópicos.
With psychotrops and, yeah.
And the first thing, a primeira coisa foi tirar a medicação, e depois que tiramos, a gente descobriu que não tinha patologia, tinha só sofrimento.
After we take out those prescriptions and drugs, and we just figure out that doesn't have pathology on those people. It's only suffering.
Então eu disse para eles, que bom que vocês chegaram, porque sozinho eu não posso. Eu vou curar vocês e vocês vão depois me ajudar a curar os outros.
So I said, thank you for you have to come, because you're going to help me out to cure myself and to help out the others.
Depois que eles ficaram bons, fizemos um treinamento para eles e hoje eles participam do projeto, como são pagos pela prefeitura.
So today, when this came, working on those people to find a better condition of them, the suffering. And right now they are healers and they are caretakers of in the project Quatro Varas, paid by the mayor city.
Outra questão, quando eu cheguei na favela, eu só podia atender individualmente 10 pessoas.
And another point is, when I arrived there, I could only see 10 people.
Tinha 10.000 querendo falar comigo.
And has more than 10,000 trying to talk with me.
Veio a ideia de criar coisas coletivas. Então, no coletivo,
so it came on me the idea to bring things to collectiveness. So it came to me to bring the sufferings in collectivity.
E depois, por exemplo, fizemos uma pesquisa no Brasil todo, em torno de 12.000 questionários.
So, and after that, we made a huge research in Brazil, like 12,000 questionnaires, 1,000 people questionnaire that we asked about your sufferings.
88,5% das pessoas que vinham atrás do psiquiatra de remédio foi resolvido na roda da terapia comunitária.
So from those 12,000, only 12% are in need of drugs and prescriptions. 88.5 Jews are suffering and struggles and were resolved in the ICT.
Apenas 11% precisava de especialista.
So only 12% it needs a prescription and a specialized service.
Foi quando o ministro da Saúde do Brasil viu o resultado da pesquisa, me chamou e disse: vamos aplicar no Sistema Único de Saúde no Brasil.
So when I show up with this data, the Minister of Health in Brazil came to me and say, "Hey, let's do this national."
E uma das a mística da terapia comunitária integrativa é: para cada destruição material, a gente tem que fazer uma reconstrução simbólica.
So one of the mysticals that we have in ICT is for each thing that is broken down in material, we need to bring it up and raise a symbolic living life way.
Quando morre homeless, morre uma mulher na rua, a gente se junta em torno do cadáver, do caixão, antes de enterrar, para refletir que sociedade é essa que as pessoas estão morrendo à míngua na rua.
So if someone is homeless, it's just laid down on the floor in death, we look to this body and we see what's going on into our society. What we can definitely do, we do not just turn away.
Quando a polícia vem e destruir a casa, os casebres das pessoas porque estavam invadindo uma duna,
so when the cops arrived and just break down all the houses that the people are building on the dunes or something like that,
a gente ia e fazia a terapia comunitária em cima dos escombros.
So we went to those places that the houses are breaking down, and we do community right there in the ICT.
E aí eu dizia, não vamos falar das injustiças e nem do governo. Vamos falar de cada de nós.
So then I start to say, we're not going to talk about the governmental issues or any cops or something that came up. Or let the human rights talk this later. Let's talk about ourselves and how we feel about this.
Aí a pergunta era, para construir nossas casas, o que precisamos além de tijolos?
So the main question is, to rebuild our houses beyond bricks and walls, what we really need.
Aí as pessoas diziam, mais união, mais respeito, que a gente começasse a se reunir mais, a brigar menos.
I think we need to be more united, to fight less, and listen more, to know what to do, to bring peace, to do some this or that.
Como nós vivemos numa cultura judeu-cristã,
as we live today in the culture of Christian Judaic,
o caos precede a construção.
The chaos precedes the building, the construction.
Onde tem caos, somos chamados a reconstruir pelo trabalho.
Wherever the chaos is, we are called to rebuild and remake the work.
Essa situação caótica da convivência humana mundial é a matéria-prima da construção de novos modelos que eu espero que esteja começando aqui também.
This rework that we are trying to figure out in the world, I hope this is a new step that we are also doing here right now.
I want to address real quickly your comment about systemic issues as well, though, with this. We are very cognizant when we talk about ICT in not saying it's a new model. And that goes to the point that there has been existing things going on in other communities for decades. This is Bridget talking. Part of the ICT launch in the U.S. may simply be assisting in mainstreaming the things and the conversations and the ability to do moderated dialogue that have been going on in areas. And so that's one of my hopes, is that those practices, the healing circles, restorative, as we introduce visible hands, and it's been practiced in 46 other countries, 2 million people's lives have been touched by this, it begins to elevate that moderated dialogue that has been effective. So.
So I think we're getting close to time here. And we are past time. Okay, which means we're right on time.
In our world.
We are going to go downstairs, and what time will we start the ICT downstairs?
Like now. Yeah, I was going to say, for individuals that are going to participate in the ICT round,
10-minute break, and we reassemble. What room are we in downstairs?
3rd floor. In the innovations room. You
No, we
can't
do
miss it. It's
ICT
very
now.
long, and it's been set up for an ICT.
You ready?
For those of you that are not, thank you so much, and thank you to you for attending and learning more about this.